All right, well, we're ready. We're going. This is episode 12 of the SLEWNIVERSE podcast. Yeah, we're excited to do number 12, and we're joined by Ken Goshen. He's an awesome artist, a teacher, an online educator. You studied in Israel at the Hatana. Is that how you pronounce it?
Hatachana. Close enough.
School. Also, you went to Parsons. I went to Parsons.
No way.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about that later. But, you have also a podcast called Art is Cool, really epic. You're in New York City. And you're like the first, like I was saying before, like the first awesome painter, traditional artist that we've had on a podcast. Actually, our first episode, we had an awesome oil painter, but, I haven't been talking to that many amazing traditional oil painters, so I'm really excited.
Thank you for the invitation. It's really fun to be here. Beautiful space you got here.
Thanks, man. So, can you just tell me, I always love, especially for artists, I like to know just brief backstory, like how you got into it, or more specifically, like where you trained. And so maybe you could give me the elevator pitch of like, how you got into it or where you really started taking it seriously. Maybe it was in Israel. Also, you're from Israel, born?
Yeah, I'm Israeli.
Okay, cool.
So maybe I'll give you like a brief bio.
Yeah. I would love that.
My name
because we don't know each other, by the way.
This is first time we meet.
Yeah.
It's really nice to be here.
Yeah.
So my name's Ken Goshen. In Hebrew, that's Ken Goshen.
Okay.
I was born in Jerusalem. And I've always been drawn to art. So, I went to an art high school, the Jerusalem High School for the Arts. I spent 1 year here in New York at LaGuardia. And,
cool.
when I was 18, I joined the military for 3 years. During the time, it was really difficult to make art. So I kind of had this, desire to paint that's been accruing for 3 years with like no outlet. So as soon as I finished my military service, a lot of people, it's extremely common for Israelis to like travel to the East or travel to South America to do like a year of cleaning their mind from, getting ready for the rest of their lives, essentially. And that did not appeal to me at all. I was thinking, okay, what can I do in a year that's really gonna kind of like balance me out and bring me back to, civilian life? And I just decided I'm gonna spend a year painting all day.
Wow.
So I signed up for Hatachana. I was unbelievably lucky to have, signed up there when the two people who taught me, Aram Gershuni and David Nippo, were teaching there the full-time master class.
Okay.
And initially, I planned for it to be like a year, and then I'll, think about what I want to do with my life. And it became just an unrelenting addiction.
Really?
At the end of that year, I knew there's just no imaginable life where I'm not doing this.
Wow.
So it's like, up until that point, I had thoughts of like being a lawyer or something that's more practical.
Okay.
But after a year of like painting all day, and all day is like sometimes 10 hours, sometimes more than that. I would just stay at a Tachana studio all day, be the first one in, be the last one out. It's just so much fun. And yeah, those years were just the best. And so I spent 3 years doing that. And then I signed up for my degree program at Parsons.
Mm-hmm.
So I moved to New York when I was 25, did my degree.
And that was like an intention to like go to university, get a degree, not to interrupt your elevator pitch of your life. But
No, for sure. It was because, I strongly believe in education. And I wanted to have a well-rounded education, especially because, I paint in a way that is not totally embraced by the mainstream art establishment. And I feel like if you're going to be a rebel, you really should know what you're rebelling against in the deepest possible way.
Like intellectually almost.
Yeah, intellectually. Yeah. Like I want to understand why they're doing what they're doing. Because if I'm going to mount resistance to it, I need to do it responsibly.
Through your art.
Through my art, through my teaching, through my advocacy, through everything I do, I want it to be responsible. So for that purpose, I felt that, the only logical thing to do, if I have a disagreement with basically everybody who's doing it, then, I have to make sure that something isn't wrong with my head, right? So for 4 years, for the degree program, I decided to like put my opinions fully to the side and really see if I embrace myself 100% in the contemporary art discourse, see how it influences me.
Wow, that's very cool.
Yeah, it's an expensive price to pay. Now thinking back at it, aside from how much tuition cost, it's like thinking what I could have done otherwise in those 4 years is like I could have probably done a lot. But that's where my mind was at that time, because I was just thinking, how could it be that I just so profoundly disagree with everything I see in galleries. I
Interesting,
gotta
yeah.
learn it. I can't just be a guy that says, "Oh, that's ugly."
But that's
and
like a
just move
heroic,
on.
almost like viewpoint. It's like, let me dive into it to see more about it rather than just being uneducated or unexperienced with it and having those crazy opinions. But you were at Parsons from 2013 to 2017.
Correct.
And how old were you at that point, if you don't mind me asking?
I started when I was 25.
Okay.
So
And
yeah,
you're how
I
old
was
right now?
33.
Okay.
Actually, a few days ago.
Happy belated.
Yeah, thank you,
Belated
thank you.
birthday. I'm
Oh yeah.
I'm 26.
Oh, but also in October? No.
No.
Just in general.
I'm just 26. Just
You're ahead of the curve, man. You're
No.
ahead of the curve.
no, I'm not. But so what was actually my question? What was the major actually specifically at Parsons?
Fine arts, but
Okay, really? Fine
Yeah,
arts.
fine
That's what I
arts.
was.
what year?
Okay, so I was fine arts 2018.
So I just left because I
Yeah.
finished
And
2017.
here's the thing, I left after one semester.
Oh, no kidding. I
Because-
got to hear about that. What
yeah,
happened?
I want to hear. I mean, I guess that was your art education, and then we'll continue with you. Real quick side note: I went to like 3 different universities. I graduated high school, went to Denver, then left, did a year abroad, just to like find myself and escape education, and then I went back to Boulder, and then I went home and built a studio and painted really seriously and made YouTube. But then I was like, oh, I need to be an artist, so I applied to Parsons. Because I started with graffiti and street art, and I was like, I took some figure drawing classes. I was really in love with like the traditional figurative, fundamental route, the atelier kind of sort of process. But I was like, I need to go to an art school, right, to be an artist. And I was fine arts at Parsons, and I like hardly ever touched a paintbrush or a pencil, especially the first year program. I don't know if you went through. And I was like 25 also. No, I was 23. And so I've already been a freshman a couple times. So it was very anticlimactic, very lackluster, this program. And I was like, this stinks, so expensive. And so I left my first semester, which was in the spring, and immediately started going to the Artist Students League on 57th and 7th, which is like a very laxed atelier, but still wonderful. And I did that for a year. And then after that year, my YouTube channel started picking up. And so I did that full time and moved back home to Connecticut.
Super interesting.
But yeah, so that was my brief stint at Parsons. But I had a great time actually. Even though I said it was like not what I wanted, I made great friends. I've been in business with a couple of my friends who went there. I still talk with all my friends. I used actually, even though I was only there for a semester, my card swiped for like 2 years. So I used their printing labs and like all their stuff and kind of like finesse them. So it was wonderful.
Yeah, overall, there's a lot to be gained from that experience, and I also think if you dig deep and think about all the things that you disagreed with, that you were exposed to opinions that you disagree with,
right?
Spending time thinking about why you disagree with them helps you grow as a thinker. And so I thought to myself, what better intellectual challenge can there be than immersing myself in an environment where I can potentially disagree with every word every professor is saying, and spend time, writing papers about it, doing research about it, sitting in the library for hours, which was my favorite thing at Parsons. The library at the 6th floor of UC in the snow with all the windows.
I know.
One of the best experiences ever. I just have such fond memories from there. And the fondest memories that I have from that school is actually from the printmaking lab. Have you had a chance to? I bet not, because a lot of freshmen don't get to.
No, I didn't. But was that in the basement?
In the basement of 2 West 13.
Yeah, okay. And that was, I think, where the fire was my year.
I was there.
Oh,
I
okay.
evacuated everybody from the fire.
Oh, okay. That was my first semester.
I was I was staff at that point.
No way.
And so the fire alarm goes off, and I literally took all the students out into the street in the cold without coats and everything. It was insane.
And that same year, my first semester, they had all the what's the word, like where they are strike and protesting for the cafeteria. So it was a crazy kind of whirlwind of a first semester. I was like, what is going on? I like moved to New York City anyways. But yeah.
So I wanted to just say a few good words about the printmaking department, because I was the first year where the new school really offered minors. So after I did my introductory year, the first year, which I think is if ever there was a waste of time, it's probably that first year. It's really poorly designed, and if anybody wants to hire me at Parsons to like fix up your curriculum, I'll be happy.
Oh, you would fix it right up.
But besides that, when you start your second year, it's when you get to choose a minor where you can really concentrate a lot of your how do you call them, electives?
Yeah,
elective. Yeah.
electives, yeah.
So I was fortunate enough to have gone to printmaking as my minor, and I spent most of my time in the printmaking lab. And let me tell you, if you are in any way a fan of the atelier mindset, by that I mean it has nothing to do really with figurative as a subject per se, but rather with a dedication to craft as meritorious. Like when you look at people who are trying to get and become the best at something, these were the people who ended up in printmaking.
Yeah.
So the teachers there were all like grizzly old school printmakers, white hair, ink under their eyes, like real military feel. Yeah. And there was one faculty there, Paul, who would like, you would print an edition and there'd be like one hint of a fingerprint on one of the prints, and he's like, that's unacceptable. He throws that out, and I'm just like, yes, yes, because this is the kind of intensity that we are totally lacking in the art world.
Yeah.
Art students believe that it's good to be kind of like relaxed and hippie and in the clouds and like
to hold a high standard.
Yeah, and I think it requires rigor, it requires discipline, it requires a certain kind of intensity that I really was able to find in the printmaking department. So I want to like take a moment to thank Parsons Printmaking for becoming a home for me for 4 years.
That's great to hear. And I rip on it, but for my experience and for me, I know Parsons is awesome. I have many friends, and even talking to you, that sounds great. And they have wonderful resources. It just wasn't what I wanted, and so that's why I left. But that's awesome to hear. And yeah, that makes me jealous. And I wish. I mean, I remember seeing the like little private studios they had on one of the other rooms. There's like, this is what you could do when you're like a senior. You could get one of these. I'm like, oh man, I have to wait 4 years.
Yeah, that's exactly how I felt. Yeah, and when I did, during senior year, which was the best year because nobody really told you what to do. As long as you had, the intellectual capacity to justify what you're doing and contextualize it into today's art discourse.
And you have barrels full, I'm sure.
Which, I became semi-competent at that, at least.
Yeah.
And so they basically let me do whatever I want. So for the first time, I spent the entire year just painting from life. And people were like, wait, I thought you were a printmaker. Because I've been submitting prints for all the assignments for 3 years, basically. And then senior year, I'm like, surprise, time to paint, people. Here we go. So that was really fun.
Were you taking painting seriously? Like, I didn't know this about you. Again, we don't really know each other that well at all, but through your social media, your story, like, were you doing like drawing and that sort of disciplined, painting through the printmaking? Or like it was all, you were doing it all, but you were focused on printmaking?
I was doing it privately. I wasn't.
That's what I mean.
I wasn't submitting it as a school assignment.
It was just like anything. A passion.
So nobody knew about it.
Oh, interesting.
It's beyond a passion. It's it's what I knew that I was going to be doing as an artist, right? So I had the responsibility to continue cultivating my skill, even when I was in an environment where these skills were not at all appreciated.
Wow.
But luckily, I think I went to that environment at the right age. I was 25. I knew what I wanted to do. I knew what I was there for. And I was not at all kind of like shaken by other people's opinion about me because, first of all, I have confidence in my views. And second of all, if somebody mounts an argument that is persuasive, I view that as a blessing because I say, okay, great. So now I'm convinced, I'm over to your side and I don't have to be wrong anymore. So being confronted with opposing views is really an opportunity for growth. And also I had a slight sense of detachment from my classmates because, they're 18. So I was a little bit of a big brother. And people were looking at me, here's that weird old dude who can kind of hang, but also has strange opinions. Yeah. So that's fine for me. I don't mind being alone. I spend most of my days alone in my studio, just thinking. So
as a lot of us artists are.
Yeah. Yeah. It's part of the gig.
What's the famous quote? Without great solitude, no serious work can get done. I think that's Picasso. Anyways, but I like that idea. And I was similar in terms of, I bounced around colleges a lot and didn't really know what I wanted to do. And it took me until that age, 24, 25, to really understand what I liked and then to apply myself. So that was kind of with my art and my, social media business and stuff. But like for you, like I really like to hear that. And I have younger sisters who I kind of talked about taking time off school, kind of find yourself, figure out what you want to do, and then take that giant step to a higher education, which is amazing, which is an amazing resource to really use every ounce of the resource and within yourself to kind of penetrate those interests. Because I feel like, again, I'm not trying to put a blanket over everyone, but a lot of kids going into school 18 don't know what they want to do. And it's a large waste of time and money.
Oh, yeah. If you're going to college and you're thinking about parties and you're showing up to class drunk or hungover,
yeah,
I recommend just doing very simple math. Think about how much you're paying per semester and divide it by the number of hours you spend in class. And then you'll see the kind of money you're wasting.
Yeah.
It's an outrage.
But also, I can't speak so generally. Also, not everyone is so well-spoken and passionate like you and awesomely talented. You're a rare one. Let's be honest, Ken.
I don't know.
I think
because yeah, I mean, how to say it? It's like,
you're driven. You seem like a driven, passionate. Also, I hear you talk about on your podcast, Art is Cool. Recently, I forgot who was the guest, but you were I think it was actually an AMA. And you're talking about how, you love art, and I don't want to speak for you, correct me if I'm wrong, but because it's so skill-based and there is this hierarchic scale of like, work, ethic, discipline to achieve the things that you want, to become proficient. Like that's like a very wonderful system. And just overarching on that topic is just like hard work and, persistence and practice, not just like fumbling around.
Yeah, but I don't really chalk it up to my, intrinsic abilities or anything like that. I chalk it up to the culture.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
If
I'm going to toot your own horn. You don't have to toot your own horn.
No. What I'm saying is I don't really think I'm special. I think I come from a culture where that is valued, right? The fact that I'm former military means a lot, right? When you're former military and you're used to like the grind and whatever, I don't want to talk about the army too much, but when you're accustomed to like having your weapon and armor and helmet and whatever, and you're patrolling in the desert somewhere at 3 a.m. in the morning where it's freezing cold, then you get handed an assignment in college. People are like, oh my God, this assignment's so hard. And for me, it's like, are you guys kidding?
Yeah.
Like, this is hard?
Yeah.
You going through experiences in life that teach you perspective. And I don't mean the artistic kind of perspective, but this is like perspective.
100%.
I'm just like, every moment of college, even if it was a very hard assignment, it's a hard intellectual assignment. Like that's not really hard. It's only hard if you've never really gone through things that are actually hard. And I think these elite colleges, due to the fact that they're so expensive, it selects for people who haven't really done a lot of actual hardship and
real life living.
Yeah. And so for them, this thing is like, it's hard to apply themselves to it. What do you mean write a paper that's 35 pages? I'm like, it means write 35 pages and write them well. Like that's exactly what it means. Just do what you're told, kind of.
Yeah.
So I do think that there is some part of the Israeli mentality that I possess, but that I know very well that, all my other Israeli friends also possess, because it's kind of like a cultural trait that once you send an entire population through a system where for 3 years they don't get to think about themselves, they need to think about others and they need to do what they're told. They understand what that's worth. And then you can apply it to everything else in your life. So I have no doubt that the kind of discipline that I advocate for in art, I would have also advocated for in any other field had I chosen to go to any other field. And like I have friends who are lawyers, who are doctors, who are whatever they are, and they speak kind of like the same way. So I think it's more of an Israeli thing than anything else.
I understand what you're saying. I think that was really well said. And I support that. I didn't have really a formative experience like that, but I don't know. I think I try to, push towards that like rigorous, altering perspective and kind of like, not complain. And
the teachers
it's hard to get that perspective sometimes, not that I don't know your personal experience. It's yours, like whether it's positive or negative or both, or it was a little of everything, but to look back and have that new perspective, not everyone has something like that.
And what I was going to say about that is, the teachers have a responsibility to advocate for these principles and to do so convincingly.
You're right.
And so if you're going to Parsons or wherever it is that you are, and your teachers aren't saying to you, if you want to get good at painting, you need to paint 10 hours a day. If they're not saying that, they are dropping the ball, right? So in Parsons, it seemed to have been acceptable to like finish your assignment the day before, right? And then we stand there and critique and all pretend that there's merit to this stuff. It's ridiculous. These are like people who are 19 who painted a painting in like 3 hours just before class. And then we have to stand there in a circle and say, oh, in my opinion, that blue is blah, blah, blah. Like the actual opinion is, this is barely a sketch, right? This hasn't even begun to scratch the tip of the iceberg of what painting can accomplish. And to sit here and do a serious critique about these objects is a ridiculous activity. It's a ridiculous activity. You know, the teachers should say, okay, good start. We need like 30 more hours into this specific painting before it starts to pick up. And you know, it's when it's not coming from your superiors, and when it's not, and this message is not coming from the world's top artists. You know, when the world's top artists are being interviewed, nobody's saying, oh, what got me here is a lot of rigor and discipline. People are saying, oh, you know, I thought of this great idea or whatever. So so originality becomes the center of the discourse, because that's the value that's being advocated. And I think originality is absolutely overrated. It's so overrated.
Or impossible at this point, I would argue.
Or impossible. And it's just kind of like, if you're a chef and the only value that matters is whether or not the food is salty. Like, what? It's just like everybody's putting more salt and more salt and more salt and more salt and more originality and more originality. And everybody's original and everybody's an individual. Okay, it's tautological at this point, right? Everybody is an individual by definition. We get it. Like you, and now what? Now what?
Totally. Yeah. What else can you say about it? That's very interesting. And that's why I want to shift soon now to like your business and social media. But that's why I like to follow, especially when I was learning art. I kind of, for whatever reason, understood that in the beginning. I wanted the discipline. I wanted someone yelling down my throat. So like Jeffrey Watts, I don't know if you follow, like he's great at telling people you're going to suck for like 3-4 years.
Great.
Like you'll never be good unless you do this for 10 hours for like 3 years. I love that. Also like people like Cesar Santos, hearing about his journey, and he has this great conversation on a podcast where he talks about going through the Angel Academy in like 1.5 years and how he was a janitor there working, painting 14 hours a day, and not to become a really amazing like masterful artist, which I would say he is now, but just to get into the game. You know, I worked that hard for 1.5 years just to like be able to have a shot at becoming like a full-time awesome artist. So perspectives like that, I'm like, you know, these people clearly, you know, have something going for them rather than the opposite of those opinions. But anyways, that was really, I'm going to listen to this again because that was really well said. And I wish we could maybe talk about that again more, but I want to talk about social media because it's a very pertinent conversation for Chris and I, this podcast, my life, but also you. It's where your business is, how you make money, besides, I'm assuming, selling paintings. But can you tell me how you got into, you know, doing art education online? And, you know, you have a wonderful platform. People who are listening, you know, you should follow Ken on Instagram because he has an amazing Instagram account where he, you know, shows everything to do with his projects, but all through, I'll let you talk about more. But how did that start? And then I have more questions to follow up, like, because it's awesome. And I watch you all the time and I learn a lot. I DM'd you that and I'm serious.
Thank you so much. Yeah, you're really kind. I really appreciate it. So the whole online teaching thing really started during COVID. Up until that point, I was one of those real sticklers saying, you can't teach painting online. I was just being stubborn. I'm such a stubborn person. So, and I realized when that stubbornness is working against me. And also I'm such a routine oriented person. So when I got to do something that's totally new, that's very difficult for me. But the pandemic hit and my whole educational model basically collapsed. So I was, you know, at risk of you know, very tangible dangers. Living here in New York is not cheap. So I basically had to look at this thing, which previously I thought of as, you know, an empty route, and think, okay, how can I take what's good about it and make the best out of it? And again, I took that almost like, again, like an intellectual challenge. Like, okay, what are the properties of the online discursive space? How can we use that in order to promulgate, English is hard, positive messages?
You're better at English than I am.
positive messages. Because initially you look at Instagram, you look at Facebook, and you're like, this place is so toxic, man. This place is so toxic. And then it becomes like, can we take this space and improve it? And if so, what would it take? And so I started thinking about it in that way. And then it clicked for me that this is not dissimilar to what's going on in the art world, right? I look at the art world, I look at what I'm seeing in galleries, and I think this place is contaminated. This place is broken in some sense. And so how can I make that better? And I was thinking, okay, so the Instagram sphere is very similar to the art world sphere. It's like I have opposing opinions, and I need to, instead of just walk away from this, say, okay, all of Instagram is just, poison. Instead, the braver thing is to say, okay, I'm going to change it from the inside.
Yeah.
So that's what I've been trying to do. I've been trying to think within the limited stuff that you can do on social media. How can you make people fall in love with painting? Fall in love with painting. Fall in love with beauty. Understand that they're not alone. Because I very strongly believe that there are many artists out there with opinions more closely resembling ours, that think they are alone or think, God forbid, that they are stupid, right? If they go to places like Parsons, they make you feel like you're old-fashioned, like you haven't read the latest postmodern bestseller or whatever. And so to create a kind of community where these things are acceptable and favored and cherished and practiced. Yeah. So that was my approach to how I started the whole Instagram my whole Instagram strategy, as they call it.
Totally. And you have a good strategy, let me tell you.
I try. And when it comes to like online teaching, I've also learned that there are benefits to it that I never expected to find.
Like what? Can you give me an example?
Crazy stuff. Yes, of course.
So, I love to hear that.
So for example, right? I up until the point when I was starting to teach online, I was taking students to the Met, right? I was taking we'd have a group of students. We would go to the Metropolitan Museum. By the way, if you're in New York and if you haven't gone to the Met in this recent year, you have to go. It's a healing experience for your soul. So
one of my favorite places ever.
Just have to shout out that the Met is the reason I live in New York. Like I moved to be close to the Met. It's just a treasure trove.
It is.
So that's where I would take students, and my mind was like, there's nothing better than standing in front of the actual Rembrandt, looking at the Rembrandt, trying to understand how Rembrandt did what he did. But then I would have these circumstances where I say, okay, can you look at the shape of that shadow, and let's try to like analyze. Is it wider than it is long, or what kind of diagonal is expressed on that whatever piece of anatomy, whatever it is? And people are like, no, I can't see that. What do you mean by shape of the shadow? What do you mean by angle? And so in the online world, I can just take that painting and literally trace it.
I see what you're saying.
And see like, okay, here, this is the shape I'm talking about. This is the diagonal I'm talking about. Now, if you compare this diagonal painted on in red to this diagonal painted on in green, which one of them is steeper? So when it comes to making people kind of like look under the hood of the old masters, it's almost easier to do online because you can scribble on them. And that's so immensely helpful when it comes to visual arts. The explanations that are most potent are visual explanations.
100%. And you're totally right. And you do that great, and a lot of other people, but I've always thought that, and you just brought it, I didn't think of it in this situation, but you're so right. I mean, there's so many things, just comparing, like, or even like a value comparison. It's like, what's the darkest part of the face? Like, where is the lightest? Like, it's hard to do that in person, I think. And when you really spell it out on an iPhone screen or a YouTube video, in like just with the overlays or the easy digital, components you have, it really spells out for people who, don't have that, baseline nomenclature of like, what is value? What is, color, or any of these like bigger, fundamental theory-based things. Because that's what I think is really important that you talk about also, which is like, there's like kind of things in the pie, in the cauldron to learn. It's like, you need to kind of understand the theory, or even the vocab words. So we're talking about chroma value, blah, blah, blah. But then there's like the going ahead, observing those, elements within theory, and then, replicating and doing it. But that's a great example. And hopefully maybe we'll overlay what you're talking about with the Instagram videos, because I think that's great. And you're totally right. I was totally of the same, especially now, because I'm starting to do figure drawing classes. And I was talking to a model last night because we had a session last night, and she was talking about how she a lot full time now does modeling over Zoom. And I'm like, what? You know, like that sounds so backwards, right? She's posing on a Zoom call for other people, and it's like, what? And so that I really don't think is wonderful, but the art education, and I'm like a product of it, you know, like I did go to the Artist Students League, which I loved, and I was about to go to Grand Central before my YouTube channel kind of got going. I was going to go there, and I was so excited because like I wanted a more rigorous program, which they offer. But I'm, other than that year, and Parsons don't even count as like learning art for a semester, but I'm fully like self-taught through online videos, you know, watching Cesar Santos, Stephen Bauman in recent years, Proco, like, and it, like they really do a good, especially the amazing artists. There's amazing artists, but then there's also amazing educators. Like I think the online resources, especially that are free, are amazing. And it's, if you have the discipline to do it, to internalize it, but then of course do it, that's like kind of the most important final frontier is like everyone can learn and read, and watch videos, but you have to do it. Like it was really immense. And I think it's a really powerful situation. So yeah.
Yeah. Not to mention the fact that, you know, we kind of live in a dark age when it comes to visual arts, right? We have the entirety of the establishment art establishment kind of co-opted by very strange ideas that I would say are false, and then there are very rare individuals who, for some unknown reason, you know, reject it, and those people are A, rare, B, are told that they are weird by everybody who holds a degree or whatever, and the online space made it possible for these people to find each other in huge numbers. And to understand that they are not alone. So it's almost like a revolt of the public.
And also, I mean, we're saying we're in the dark ages, but it's like almost, I don't know what the year timeline is, but in the last 3-4 years, maybe even from COVID, people like you starting amazing platforms and other people and gathering the communities of like fine arts. I feel like maybe it's almost like a little renaissance of like, I've never heard of more people being into traditional fine arts, being interested in like, you know, the quote unquote traditional oil painting world, but that's like an exciting thing.
Yeah, you're talking my language. You're talking my language, and you know, this has a how to even start. It's okay. So thinking about the next renaissance is something that I'm just obsessed with.
Really,
just obsessed with.
Let's go down this rabbit hole
because this is not unusual when you look at human history, right? You have times of immense growth and flourishing, and you have times of decadence and self-involvement and, you know, not much being progressed. But when those dark ages are upon us, most of the people don't want to admit it, don't know about it, and the people in power definitely do not have any incentive for anything to change, right? So if I'm a major collector, right, and I have Yves Klein paintings, right, that are worth millions and millions of dollars and are rubbish, if I want to if I want to maintain the status where these paintings are worth anything, I'm going to pour enormous amounts of resources to cultivating arts program that maintain the status quo. Otherwise, my whole, you know, everything that I put into those Yves Klein's paintings are going down the drain, right? So we have people who are just immensely rich and powerful who have every incentive to keep us in the dark ages. And that's similar to what happened in the dark ages in Europe, right? We had the church. The church was rich, the church was powerful, and the church had every incentive to keep things the way they are. And when a renaissance arises, it arises in part due to some kind of extraneous circumstance. Something else is added into the system, right? So in this case, you could call it social media. You could go as recent as COVID, but there is some kind of circumstances that changes that basically hijacks the power, you know, from underneath the feet of those people who previously had total control. So I very strongly believe that we are advancing towards a new renaissance, but not to sound too positive, I'm not sure we're gonna live to see where it goes. I think historical trends are way slower than we tend to think.
Well, especially when looking back, it's so easy to talk about 3-4 decades like this.
And worse, right? The most famous, the Dark Ages, where this is 900 years of nothing, right? 900 years of nothing. We can say, right? We are now we're now at a little over 100. That's not much. We could easily see 200 years of more Yves Klein, right? Before we even get started. And I think there's something really important to say about that. That is, if your head's not in the right place, this could sound depressing, but I prefer to think about it as humbling, right? Think about Raphael, right? Raphael or Van Dyck. These people, Raphael at 21 was the Pope's painter. He painted things that are, better than you and I could do in our lifetime. Van Dyck, what he did at 21, I'm crying just thinking about it, right? And Dürer, same thing. You see Dürer's self-portrait when he was like 11. It's like unbelievable stuff. But these people are not born into a vacuum. And if they were born 300 years earlier, there would be no Raphael, there would be no Dürer, right? There would be no Van Dyck. So right now, we have people being born into an environment that is totally unconducive for mastery in the visual arts. And I don't think any one of us can ever be as good as Velázquez. And this is not to be down. I'm not saying we're less talented. I'm not saying we're less smart. I'm saying the environment is unconducive for excellence in the arts. And so what I see our role is, like, unfortunately, I don't think we are going to be remembered for our painting, but we are going to be remembered for creating the environment that in 2 or 3 generations produces the next Rembrandt, produces the next Velázquez. So it's something else that I'm thinking about in social media, because I'm thinking about, artists like to think about legacy. If I could never be Raphael, but if I could be somebody like Giotto, right, who he's like at the very start of the Renaissance, the 14th century, just the first steps outside of the medieval paradigm, right? That makes it possible for Michelangelo and Donatello and Raphael and Da Vinci and the big guns to be born into an environment that is well cultivated, and be born into an environment that appreciates beauty, that is the right, that has the right kind of values, the right kind of principles reign supreme, such that these people who are immensely talented can grow into the masterful artists that they became. That's our role. So if you're a painter out there kind of thinking, I'm going to be the best that there ever was, I'm sorry to tell you, you're probably not. The deck is stacked against all of us. But my love for painting and for visual arts and for aesthetic just far exceeds my personal ego. I don't care if I'm not the best that there ever was. I don't care. I don't even care if I'm the best that is alive. I have no pretense to doing any of it. But what I will never give up on is being part of the wave or the community or the whatever you want to call it that creates a new environment where maybe not the next generation, maybe not the generation after that, but the ones after that, those people will owe us something. I'm expecting these people who haven't been born yet to pick up on what we are putting out there and get to work. Because it's a little bit too late for us, but we can still make a difference if we think about it, if we think about art as a cultural production issue. It's a cultural issue. And as a society, we are just mortally malnutritioned when it comes to aesthetic. I was walking around on your street. I'm sorry, it's ugly as all is, right? It's super.
This street.
Yeah, it's super.
It's industrial, it's dirty.
But have you ever walked through Florence?
Yes, I have.
Oh my God.
Times.
If you're born in Florence, the people who built that city, it's like kids learn a language.
Yep.
So,
innately.
If you are a baby and you're born and raised in Florence, chances are you're going to understand aesthetic on a way deeper level than somebody born in Brooklyn, because aesthetics is all around you.
Yeah.
And it's up to us to create this environment where aesthetics and principles of high design are in the discourse, are in the air, so that the people who need to pick up on it when they're young are able to do so.
I have something to say about that. I think that's so interesting, and wow, what a epic rant that was, Ken. That was like wonderful. You're so well spoken, and that was just a joy to listen to. But speaking specifically, like what you just said, it makes me think about the world we live in today. It's so saturated. It's like, is there even the possibility to sort of like manufacture this really narrowed focus of one aesthetic? I'm sure you're not talking about one specifically, more of the general idea, but like we talk about this a lot in like social media, being unique, making artwork. Like there are so many more people, I think, doing it, even though we can't get to the level of the masters in the 15th century or whatever. Like there arguably probably are more painters today, right? Just around the world, just in general, just because of the population, the accessibility, the quality of life. But there's so many different people, artists of every genre, musicians, videographers, whatever, photographers. The lines are blurred now, and there's so many of these people making things that, like, I feel like it's almost not in like a nihilistic way, in a pessimistic way, but like it's almost impossible to kind of, perhaps, strive for this like unified culture or this really specific environment like Florence has for architecture or sculpture or painting. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like we've come to this point with social media, because of social media and the accessibility of it and how much everyone can see. Like we are seeing, like, how many paintings have you seen in your life through the internet? Thousands, tens of thousands. I definitely probably have. And like compared to before the internet was a thing, I'm just saying, like, we've come to this place, I feel like, in our 2021 world where it's just hard to perhaps manufacture an environment like that. Do you know what I'm saying? Am I being clear?
Yeah.
And the saturation of everything.
I don't even spend a moment thinking about that, because the way I think is every person has a radius of influence that they broadcast, right? So you want whoever chooses to walk into your radius of influence to be influenced positively, right? And of course, I'm biased. I have an agenda. I want people to care about the things that I think are neglected. And then so all that social media does is enable you to expand that radius. That's and in general, I think, life is too short to worry about what you can't do. I just can't spend seconds thinking about that. I just think, what's the absolute best use of my time?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, as saturated as Instagram may be with other artists' work, it totally doesn't matter to me, because it's not about me, and I consider those people my allies potentially, right? So it's not competition, it's allies, and I don't feel like I'm advocating for any kind of limited view of what art should be. It's really, there are very, very few core principles. Like, for example, a core principle that really matters is that, to me, is that beauty is real. Beauty is...
That's a podcast title, I think.
Yeah,
of yours.
If beauty is real, right, then people think, okay, beauty's a matter of opinion. There is no such thing as beauty. And I'm like, that's poor definition. Because if, let's say, we walked 100 people through your street in Brooklyn and 100 people through the piazzas of Florence, it could be that 3 of them will say, oh, Brooklyn's more beautiful. What does that even mean? What that means is we need to look at these exceptions and figure out, how they came to be so wrong. But objectively, I think beauty is real. And as far as I'm concerned, that's not something that we hear in everyday discourse. Even when you talk about, whatever, I don't want to get into politics, but there used to be a time when you would tell people who are overweight that this is not good for them. Right now, this is considered foul play, right? What do you mean? Everybody's beautiful. If everybody's beautiful, nobody is.
Yep, that's one of my favorite quotes.
It's definitional, right? If everybody's beautiful, no one is. And if every painting is beautiful, then, or if every painting is original or tries to be original or tries to be beautiful, then no painting is. And let me just finish that thought, because what I think is, if a painter believes that beauty is real and they are pursuing beauty with all their faculties and they paint abstractly, they are my best ally. They are my best ally. I'm not trying to advocate for a style. I'm trying to advocate for the fact that we, as human beings, Homo sapiens, are designed to basically cultivate environments around us that are saturated with beauty so that we feel at home. Right? Bees create beehives, right? Ants create anthills. We create environments that are fit for human survival and the lifting of the human spirits. And that is what we call beauty. And everybody who's on track to telling me that beauty is real and is more important than originality and is something that we need to surround ourselves with, otherwise we will be depressed and empty, those people are my allies. For example, I walk through your street on the way to the podcast and I'm thinking, this place is so ugly. Like nothing ever good could come from this place. But then I walk into your studio. First thing I said, this place is beautiful. Oh, yeah. Well done. Thanks. I've been saying that for like a minute, right? Oh, really beautiful, really beautiful. Because my spirit was elevated by the fact that somebody who cares about designing environment fit for human habitation has taken time to design the space that you have. So it's pleasant to be here. I can sit here. I can express ideas. I believe I can paint, and I think maximization of human potential has a lot to do with living in an environment that you don't feel rejects you, right? There are times when you're in a place where you're just like, I can't spend another minute in here. Yeah. And that doesn't really happen to you in beautiful places. In beautiful places, you want to stay, you want to think deeply, and you want to express yourself creatively. So everybody who believes in that is my ally.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's an awesome way to put it also. And that's like a very, current topic also. I mean, you mentioned the thing about people's weight or just like there has to be some sort of like, standard for beauty. Again, I think it is subjective, like especially in the world where not subjective to a point within the realm of structure and clear definitions, right? Like similar thing I think is music or art. For our example, it's like, contemporary art and all of the different genres, like the most traditionally trained Russian anatomist, isn't the most famous artist these days. It's the people, it's the other contemporary artists that, have some skill but evoke emotion, or they are nepotism in the big galleries. Same with music, the most skilled jazz musicians that can play the most advanced chord progressions aren't the most famous. Some of them are, but it's mostly the pop singers who, allocate the music to the widest audience and have the media behind them, blah, blah, blah. But I agree with you with the beauty conversation. I don't think as deeply as you, but it's refreshing to hear. But what I was saying before with not being pessimistic about finding, like the subjectivity and there's too much. I'm just saying for me, like I don't let that bog me down. I kind of just, I'm ranting, but you were talking about, we'll never be able to be the best artist. And like, yeah, I've never thought that. Like I am in a competition with myself to be the best I can because I love it so much. And I could obviously spend more time, but my goal and my core principle is always just to progress and be super passionate about it. And that's like all I'm ever concerned about. Maybe I'm like on a thinner layer of thinking than you are, like with my whole practice and creating. But, and I do a couple other things besides just painting, but, yeah, I think that's wonderful, and I don't even know where I'm going, but
I could just say that when it comes to painting, I think, and really every discourse, you have to think about where did we come from and where are we going?
I don't really think about that. To be honest,
I think you should. Maybe I
think of it differently, but like I love what you're saying, but I'm trying to think of what. As me as an artist, being like, wow, Ken's thinking about all these awesome things. Like, do I think about things? Like,
think about science, right? You don't get Einstein without Newton, right? And these people build on each other's ability, right? So
I internalize that,
But what I mean is, when somebody writes a new science paper, they don't have to reprove everything from scratch because other people have already proved it. It's like, this is why gravity exists. Citation, Einstein. This is why this exists. Citation, whoever else came up with another idea. So people have already made so much advancements, and then modern day scientists are able to push the discourse forward. But with art, it seems like we're constantly trying to reinvent the wheel, which is crazy because there's been so much already invented that if we build on, that's the only way that we're going to be able to take it to the next level. Like, how did the Renaissance happen, right? These are people who were looking backwards, like 1,000 years backwards into the classical age, and thinking, how the hell did these people do these things? Like, think of Brunelleschi walking around Rome and seeing the Pantheon, right, built by the ancient Romans, right? Modern day Italian, looking at the Roman structures and saying, how is this? How did they even build that? It's crazy because humanity should not allow ourselves to lose knowledge. This is such, it's beyond irresponsible. It's almost, this is the biggest crime, I think, against culture, to let advancements just fade away into the past. So these people who started the Renaissance looked at ancient Rome, looked at ancient Greece and say they knew so much more than we do, and we should be absolutely ashamed of ourselves.
Yeah.
And so they dug up all this knowledge and revived it. And it brought, a period of unprecedented flourishing to a previously completely dark and backwards thinking environment. And that is because there was an actual attempt to find wisdom that was lost.
A dome within a dome.
There you go. there you go. There you go. And so to me, it's like we look back in our, you don't see that, for example, in martial arts, right? In martial arts, people are just advancing. Great. There's no dark age in martial arts. Nobody forgot the lessons of Bruce Lee.
Just slowly built on.
Yeah, built on. That's why I'm so infatuated with MMA, because these fighters today, who are champions today, are the best that ever was.
Yeah.
Period. They just keep improving.
Same with chess.
And it's except there you have the old AI conversation, which is a big conversation.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying about art is that we don't have that. We don't just continue improving, and we could, and we should. And we should, for the betterment of ourselves and for the betterment of humanity. We have to stop looking to reinvent the wheel and build on the wisdom that is there.
I just think the word art is so encompassing versus martial arts, Not to say martial arts is so small, but like, are you saying like traditional art? You're talking about, like the abstract, like it's just a harder definition to put under like that whole wonderful monologue you just talked about. It's like, you're just saying art. We can't let art lose the advancements, but like what specifically, you talk very generally beautifully, but like,
I'm happy to do it.
That's what my instinct is like.
Let's go specifically.
Yeah.
Let's go specifically. So when you read Plato, right? Plato talks about the virtues of man, right? And one of the virtues is beauty. So a person has to concern themselves with beauty when you read ancient Greek literature. Where is that? That's what I mean by art. Today, if you are concerned with the beautiful, you are deemed superficial, right? There is a there's a culture around all around us that says, beauty doesn't matter. What matters is utility. Right? That's what produced your street, right? These buildings are utility, right? You need these buildings to produce whatever, auto parts. I don't know what they're doing there. But this is not a building that was made and thought of. This is a street where humans will be walking around and feeling inspired.
Function.
Yeah, straight function. And I think that what's going on here is the value of creating environment that are fit for inspiring and for being inhabited by our biological beings, right? I think we have a biological need to live around beautiful things and in beautiful spaces that we are currently just looking away from. It's like being vegan and not taking B12. You're going to be in trouble. You're going to be in trouble because you have a nutritional responsibility to get all your nutrients. I'm sorry. And so we are deficient in this value. I think it is a core value. I think it's what makes us different from a lot of other animals, but similar to very few, like bees. Who is it? Jonathan Haidt, I think, that talks about how people are like 90% monkeys, 10% bees. I think it's either Jonathan Haidt or Paul Bloom.
Cool.
And I think this is something that book should have also contained. The preoccupation with designing our own spaces. Very few animals do it, but those who do, some birds, right, when they build their nest, we have the ability to create beauty because we have that need inside us. Even when people were living in caves, you see the walls of these caves are designed. There's no function to that design. There's no function to those hands, to those buffaloes, to those tigers. It's just something we need to do in order to put ourselves in the best psychological and mental space. And we have abdicated that responsibility. And this leads to a profound psychological disadvantage. We could be better.
That's awesome. That's so interesting. I want to switch real quick because I want to run out of time without asking a couple other questions. One of my personal favorite things about oil painting specifically is color and color theory. And like when I started mixing oil painting colors and like I fell in love with it and I couldn't believe I didn't do it more. And like it's totally different. I get so many questions from younger kids all the time comparing acrylic versus oil, and I think there's no comparison. Like the analogy I use to those two mediums is like acrylic is like an automatic car and oil is like a manual car. Like you can finesse it more, you have more control. Anyways, but you are an absolute wizard with color, a color alchemist, I'd say. And blanket statement, can you just tell me what you love about color? And like, I don't know, I would love to talk because I love talking generally and then I love bringing it really specifically. So maybe after you wonderfully rant some more, because I can't get enough, you could talk about like your favorite colors or your combinations. I watch all your Instagram videos and everyone listening should check out Ken, because obviously color is a massive thing within painting, but it's a world. It's a wide world. And I would love to hear you just go off about it.
Oh man.
I know. I just kind of fed a beast, but I had to ask you about it.
No, of course. I'm happy to talk about color. This is part of why I love teaching, because people are willing to just listen to me rant about my favorite things. People are like, oh, why do you love teaching so much? Because there's people who want to hear me talk about the things I love the most.
But people learn. Like, you got to remember that. You got to remember that.
Anyway, so color, the way I think about color, you brought up music. Right? There is something about music that I think music as an art form has a built-in advantage over visual arts. And I'm going to try to explain that. So again, I go back to our biology all the time because this is a subject that's very, very close to my heart. As animals, our visual sense is our primary sense. This is the sense that we use for orienting ourselves in space. Like somebody who is blind is far more disadvantaged than somebody who is deaf when it comes to just like not bumping into walls, right? So our visual faculties are designed for survival. I'm not looking at that wall thinking, oh, look at that transition from purple to yellow to all that kind of stuff that's happening on the wall. I'm thinking it's that far so I don't bump into it, right? So the way that we are used to utilizing our sense of vision is completely detached from the sensory experience itself. You walk out into the street, you think building, cars, dogs, people. You don't think purple, red, gray, yellow. You don't think that. But in music, that doesn't happen. So music, our sense of hearing is occupying a really special place of being very, very, very developed, but also not so intrinsically connected to survival. So you can listen to a chord on a piano and say, oh, that chord makes me happy. Oh, that chord makes me sad. Oh, that's a major 7 chord. It feels kind of happy, but also it's open to some kind of resolution. You know, you have all these combination of notes that immediately evoke emotion. You don't hear a G major chord and you think, caution. What does it mean? What does it mean? You don't think, what does it mean? You're like, oh, this fills me with happiness.
Okay,
right?
Cool. Yeah,
so
I like that.
For me, color is the way.
Sorry.
No worries. So, should I continue?
No, yeah. He's just some random guy that.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
So
sorry about that.
Color is the bridge, right? It's the bridge. It's all the stuff that if we were paying attention to would make visual arts like music, right?
I love that analogy.
It's just it's the abstract property that creates everything that we see.
Yeah.
But that can be manipulated and designed like chord progressions, right?
Okay.
So if I'm looking at your face right now, you know, and I'm seeing that shadowy, the shadow plane that's kind of purple, and then when we have a transition, it goes towards your cheek, and so we see something much lighter and a little pinker, and underneath it where your mustache starts, it goes a little green, right? So that's a combination. That's 3 notes, right? We got that green, we got that pink, we got that purple. In my eye, I see that not under the survival paradigm, but under the musical paradigm. So I hear that chord is like a half diminished chord. You know, these colors are kind of close together in a bit of a tension.
Yeah.
So if I can visually create that half diminished chord or diminished chord, because I only said 3 notes, not 4, but that diminished chord on my palette, I can look at how those colors look like and how they interact and what emotion they evoke when detached from what they are supposed to depict.
Right.
So for me, the depiction if we are comparing it to music, it's like the layer of the lyrics, right? What is being said, right? So at the end, the layer of the lyrics is a portrait of portrait of you, right? But the underlying compositional structure is composed of shapes and colors that in of themselves are completely abstract and are more akin to our experience of music. So for me, there's just this kind of collective missed opportunity when it comes to appreciating vision and the immense joy that can be afforded to us if we look at vision slightly less through a less utilitarian lens, and actually, don't just stand in front of a sunset to appreciate beauty. I can stare at this corner of this wall and look at all the colors that are happening there, and it could just make me emotional, right? Because the colors are beautiful. The harmony of life is beautiful. And the only, the best tool for turning that into music other people can hear is color.
And I couldn't say that better in a few eons, but like that's why I love painting, because you are, at the end of the day, usually we're trying to communicate something, a figure, a portrait, a landscape, but like the way, the journey to communicate that is building, these shapes of color and value, and like it's wonderful to describe it that way as a form of communication.
Can I pause you 1 second?
Yep.
You just touched on something really interesting. So you're saying we're trying to communicate something, a figure, a landscape, and the color is kind of like, I don't want to misinterpret what you said, but the color is kind of like the way to get there. For me, it's the other way around.
Okay.
It's like, it's not that color is how I'm going to evoke figure. It's figure is how I'm going to get color.
Right. Okay.
Right?
I see what you're saying.
Figure is an opportunity to basically touch on a gap between what is it and how is it, right? And I like kind of like pushing that gap more and more and more. You have portrait of a woman, right? That could be painted by Caravaggio and it could be painted by Raphael, and it could be the same woman, and the painting will evoke a completely separate set of emotion, right? When you look at a Caravaggio, it's, you have no air in your lungs. And when you look at a Raphael, you're like, I don't even need to breathe anymore. There's so much air in this painting, right? It's and it could be the same exact person. And what sets those things apart are abstract elements, design, right? What colors are used, how the shapes are designed, how the frame is designed. This is something that maybe you experienced in the Art Students League. I experienced very profoundly at a Tachana. We would have figure drawing all day, every day. And I would sit there in front of the figure, and right next to me would be another painter, and right next to them would be another painter. We would all be painting the same person in the same light source, in the same room, and yet those paintings communicated totally different emotions, right? Some of them are like very serene, understated, harmonious. Some are like dramatic, explosive, and it's not because of anything that changed with the figure or the light or the room. It's what happened with how the artist chose to design that frame, right? So there is so much expressive potential to design that I think makes art so valuable. I could never get enough of seeing how we could paint the same lemon. And all your
halal breads.
Oh, the challah breads.
Challah. Excuse my pronunciation.
No worries.
That's, and like the immensity and the infinity, if that's even a word, is what is amazing also. Like you just said, like every artist in the world can, paint the skull and it'll look different, or, paint your portrait, and it's so wonderful. Can we pull up some of the things we had? Because we have a few of your paintings. That I want to talk about. And we'll overlay this on the video podcast specifically.
That's nice.
You can listen to it, but because I think it's an interesting conversation. We've been kind of talking about we didn't talk about much as an educator. I would have loved to talk about that more. Maybe next time you're on. But like you being a teacher, and kind of operating to expose technical training and the theory and the fundamentals to an audience, but then yourself being an artist and creating and manufacturing your own work, which I would assume, I don't want to speak for you, is kind of separate from that category. And, I'm sure it informs obviously your work, your practice and improving and experimenting, but specifically, the work that I'm going to pull up, All right, we had technical difficulties, but we're back. All right, so these specifically, I'll repeat what I said because I guess you didn't really understand what I said, and I apologize if it's a bad question or isn't articulate.
I was just lost in my thoughts. Go for it.
Because I'm assuming you're an art educator, and that's a big portion of your time. Again, trying to expose like the technical side of being a draftsman or a painter, or talking about color and all of these smaller elements that and skills you need to execute paintings. But then you are obviously a painter, an artist, making your own work, saying your whatever you have to say, your discourse and opinions through art. And so the honking, we'll just have to deal with it. But like, for example, this painting is like, in my opinion, way different than, your more traditional drawings going to the Met, obviously stylistically. And I would love for you to just elaborate on, we have 3 of these, right, Chris? I think they're all, I don't know if this is a series. Maybe you can flip through them. All of these that are, of the similar, this softer style. But I would love for you to talk about it because I really don't get to talk about artists and their like awesome work. And I'm sure there's other paintings you do, right, in different styles. But this as a body, I would love to hear you talk about. Please and thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Sorry about the honking, guys.
No worries.
And you, Ken. We're in Brooklyn.
Yeah, there's a big difference as you're pointing out between the kind of exercises that I think are
So
that Brooklyn.
Yeah.
There's a gap between the kind of art that is conducive to learning and the kind of art that you need to be making in order to express yourself, express your point of view, communicate something that's on your mind. And I really do think that a lot of people have this misunderstanding that they can paint the kind of paintings that make them happy and also that they're going to learn the most from it. It's incorrect, unfortunately. You can't learn the piano by only playing whatever, Randy Newman or whoever floats your boat. You need to be doing really simple exercises at the beginning, right? You need to be doing your scales.
Yep.
If you're learning guitar, you're not just jumping to Jimmy Page, hopefully, right? You're doing some fundamentals first. So when I teach, of course, I'm focusing on the fundamentals. And if an exercise seems laborious and boring, take a moment to consider whether or not that's not by design, right? Because when you're learning piano and you have to drill Bach all day, right, and it's a little bit kind of dry, that's necessary. So if you're a student and you're listening to this and you're trying to get better, but you're constantly preoccupied with your own personal statement and what you want to put out there in the world, you're going to be a little stagnant because from doing what inspires you personally, you get the benefit of expressing yourself in front of the world, but you're not going to get a lot better. If you want to get a lot better, apply yourself to something really, really boring. In most cases, hopefully with a wise curriculum design. Otherwise, you could also be wasting your time.
Yeah, one of my teachers once said, painting is 80% training, 20% like making art. I mean, there's been different quotes like that, but it's a very general sense of...
Definitely at the beginning, right?
Yeah.
Definitely at the beginning. And so when you become a little bit more savvy when it comes to, controlling your materials, that percentage can change.
Sure.
So I would say that for me, it's closer to the 50-50 mark right now of things that I do to keep sharp, to keep my skills, and unfortunately in art, you don't only build your skills. It's closer to sports. You have to do a minimum to just keep them afloat. Yeah. There were years where I feel like I was better, and then years that came after when I was rusty.
Yeah.
I just couldn't deliver,
Same.
and it's annoying.
Way.
It's annoying to look at paintings that you did like 4 years ago and say, I can't do that today. It's a bummer, but it happens. So there needs to be some portion of your time that's allocated to maintaining your skill level. And then there are paintings where you can go totally experimental, break the rules, because that's how you find new horizons, right? So you need to, when I break the rules and when I play around and experiment like with this specific body of work, I do that with the utmost respect to history and thinking about how, it's what I was saying before, right? Where did we come from and where are we going?
Yeah.
Right? That's a question that inspires me a lot. And I'm thinking, how can I take the core principles that really matter to me and distill them to the core such that they best express what I feel, right? And so in this specific series of paintings, what I'm assuming are alluding to in how they are different from the more conventional quote-unquote classical style is that the definition, the details kind of aren't there, right? They're not there. And so you can almost pose these paintings as a question mark, like when detail is lost, is anything gained, right? When resolution is lost, what holds the painting up? Because I think a lot of classical painters, and I think, you can disagree, but I see that in the work of a lot of people who left traditional ateliers, they rely on their rendering and their capturing of detail for the merit of the work.
Totally.
And it bums me out to no end to see just like you have this like rectangular frame with a nude figure standing like this, and it's like, that's it. And that's it. The nude figure is like expressed.
It's almost idealized to be even more hyper detailed.
Yeah, it's captured beautifully, but who cares, right? Who cares about this design? This is just another rectangular rendition of a nude figure. Doesn't excite me. So whenever I feel like there's something in me that is starting to become a crutch that I'm relying on for the worth of my work, my immediate inclination is to forbid myself from doing it for a period of time so that I can learn to find merit in other avenues.
Wow.
And for this specific body of work, it fit perfectly with the concept because these are memories that I have from my military service, things that are stuck in my head. Now, the nature of memories is that they're a little bit blurry. They're a little bit foggy. You don't remember exactly what the facial expression was. You just remember the angle, like how I was on the ground, or here I was a little higher. You remember the angle from which you're looking at the situation.
And the feeling that invokes almost.
Yeah, the atmosphere, the air, those things you remember really. And something really important to say about here is that these images that you have in memories or in dreams don't become less profound because they lack detail. Sometimes these memories are the most profound images that you can conjure in your mind, but you don't conjure them with fingernails and eyebrows. You conjure them like almost, a tapestry of color and a tapestry of shapes that are just incredibly evocative and emotional. So I thought, what better way to try to experiment with making high quality designs without relying on details than dealing with designs that are already like that. The designs of memories lack details, and yet they are no less visually profound or psychologically profound. So that's what's behind these paintings.
I love that. That's very cool. And I don't know if you've written a blurb about it, or these are, how old are, like, what was the dates of these? Was this pre-COVID or?
This is 2018.
Oh, okay, so kind of a long time ago. But yeah, I really love to hear the artists talk about it, and I can listen to you talk all day, sir. Are you working on anything currently?
So
that it's behind the scenes? I don't know if you want to share, but I'm just curious. Like, this was 2018. You seem, and I similarly do that. I mean, I have so many different hats I wear now that, like, I hardly paint as much as I want to because I have other things I have to do, and I like to do the other things. But like sometimes, I really don't get to paint enough, and I'm like, oh, I wish I could just paint more. So my experimentation, like you said, that I equally think is very important, and to stay current, or to run away from the staleness of work, is to experiment and try new things. I do very different styles, like these graphic things that I kind of really started with. I've kind of been only doing oil painting the last, 2 years, year and a half. And I haven't even feel like I've scratched the surface, and I'm really excited to kind of do it more because I have ideas and I feel like I'm, capable of doing larger compositional paintings. Anyways, is there anything else you're working on right now that you could tell us?
So,
or what's up?
Yeah. So what's up?
That was a very quick non sequitur.
What's up? What's up is that I had a body of work that I was working on prior to COVID, and it involved, having models in my space, sitting for me, which became kind of impossible to do during COVID. Like, nobody would. Meeting people face to face became more difficult, and that body of work is still on my mind, but I haven't been like able to fully go back to working on it. So this is a lot of like unfinished work all around my space. But I don't want to kind of jinx myself, because people are like, I feel like once I semi flush out an idea out there verbally, I become less inclined to want to flush it out visually. But it's almost a lot. Okay, here's how I'm going to explain it. So for me, again, it's where we come from and where are we going, right?
Mhm.
So there's this very strong affinity to incorporating the wisdom of the past, but also try to see what is unique and good about where we are today, and how can that be added to all the wisdom of the past so that we can create something that is more relevant today. So basically this body of work is like a combination of my love for classical painting and my appreciation for the medium of ready-made. So that's
Ready-made. What do you mean?
ready-made. I mean, Marcel Duchamp takes a chair, puts it in a gallery, and it's like, or a urinal, puts it, and it's like, that's art, right?
Oh,
That's
like the banana on the wall.
a little bit, yeah.
Okay.
Things that are already made,
I
things
see.
things
Okay.
that are banal, things that are in our day-to-day environment. We don't traditionally think about them as art. So I'm kind of working on a project that brings, in my opinion, the ready-made into harmony with classical painting. But it's a big statement. So hopefully, I'm trying to do it. So we'll see if I succeed.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's exciting. Yeah, I feel like, again, to talk about the experimental thing, I'm like very weird, and I've never really done that or been like this, but like in terms of experimenting, I could do very small series, like either 1 or 2 works, or even like this project. This is like 3 of the same. And yeah, I have similar reoccurring characters, and for me, I love looking back. Like I sometimes think that my younger self, like very young, like 18, 19, or even younger, I have old sketchbooks from like 14, like those core ideas I had when maybe I had like 0 design language or skills, but the core idea, like, oh, I love that idea. And I thought it was like, in that younger mind, it was like the most raw and creative. And like, I always want to delve back into those. So a lot of my work, especially with the more graphic stuff, is kind of pulling from very old conceptual ideas, especially like these Cyclops, and trying to re-evolve them. So yeah, I guess I look back, but I don't really, because you've been intriguing me so much with your looking back and where we're going. But I feel like I'm trying to look inside myself and, venting right now. I don't look forward that often, other than like, the next project, but not really where my place is, and as an artist, or even like a YouTuber or a content creator, or, like
You're reaching thousands of people.
I know, but I'm saying, like, you've struck something in me saying like, oh, I wonder, I think it is. I mean, maybe I don't think as passionate as you, but it does seem like almost a duty to be able to look back and to look forward, or keep those both, at a valuable place in our minds.
Yeah. It's also not the case that I think everybody needs to be as nerdy as I am, right?
You're a mega nerd, and I love it.
I'm extremely nerdy. So if I am expecting everybody to be as nerdy as I am, then I'm going to be living a life of total disappointment.
No, but you're just so convincing
total
with your
disappointment.
wonderful.
But for you have a different style. You have a different style.
Of course, I'm a different person. I have a different world.
I could never do what you do. And that's great. Let's each of us are going to tackle this passion from a different angle, and there's room for all of us to do this thing our way. So I have tremendous respect for what you're doing, the people that you're touching. I'm assuming that you could bring the love and the joy of painting to a whole lot of people that I can't reach because I'm too nerdy for them. Right? If I'm too nerdy for some people,
but to each his own for both of us. You could
and then you can reach other people who prefer your way of looking at the world. And who knows, maybe I'm a little older than you. Maybe when you're my age, you're gonna be totally different. Who knows, right? You're saying you're 26. I don't know if I was talking like this at 26.
Oh, yeah.
So things change all the time, and I think as long as your heart is in it, which it clearly is, and you're working hard at it, then just keep going. Well,
thanks.
Of course.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, this has been a wonderful conversation. How long have we been going, Chris? Okay, cool. Well, I think that's a good time to end. This was what a treat. I mean, like, I'm gonna listen to this quite often because it was awesome. You're clearly so passionate, and maybe we'll have you back to keep talking. But if everyone's listening, the millions and millions of people that watch this podcast, just kidding. But you got to go check out Ken Goshen on Instagram, and you have we didn't even talk about your Patreon, but really, if you want to even dive deeper into art, you can check out your Patreon where there's live painting courses and wonderful library of things. It was just a pleasure. We're spoiled.
Thank you so much for the invitation. So to anybody who wants more of my ranting, everything is under the umbrella of kengoshen.com. That's kengoshen.com. That's where you're going to find links to my Patreon, links to my lessons, links to my Instagram, all that good stuff. And I really appreciate the invitation. I'd be psyched to come back again.
Of course, yeah. We'll blast all the links and everything. And also, we're probably, hopefully, we haven't even figured it out, but we're going to do some sort of demo. Ken's going to, whip out some pencils and paint. We'll see, but we're going to get weird. And that might be a separate video on my channel, or we'll figure it out. But I think Ken's going to do a demo here in the studio, and I'm very excited about that also.
All right, let's get going.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.